Welcome to 1984 Law, and today we take a look at the subject of party children and marriage in Orwell's dystopian world. In the novel, our template for the average oceanic party family are the Parsons. Tom Parsons has been covered in his own dedicated video, however it's useful to outline his situation for our purposes today. Parsons is the neighbour and work colleague of Winston. He works in the Ministry of Truth, though in a position that requires no intelligence, and is superficially at least a willing and loyal drudge of the party. He is around 35 years of age during the events of the book, and is married to an unnamed woman known simply as Mrs. Parsons. Mrs. Parsons is a crushed, haggard woman, aged before her time. She lives in daily terror at the cruel whims of her two children, both of whom have been conditioned and are expected to possibly denounce her or her husband in due time. Winston notes that despite her age of 30, she has dust in the creases of her face. Before we get into exactly why the Parsons live in an unspoken fear of their own children, it's important to explain how marriage works in Oceania. As with all aspects of an outer party member's life, marriage is highly controlled and warped towards service to the party. The only purpose of marriage is to produce children for service to the party. Winston notes when considering if he and Julia could marry that special committees exist for the purpose of sanctioning matches. Since the party requires all its members to have an unflinching and solid devotion to the principles of Ingsoc and Big Brother alone, no such committee ever sanctions a marriage where the couple concerned shows any sign of being physically attracted to one another. This is, of course, given that any such match has the risk of creating loyalties away from Big Brother and the party. In the two specific cases we have, the Parsons and the Smiths, both marriages bear this out. In the first case, Mrs. Parsons does show some mild affection for her husband, in insisting that if Tom were present, he could fix the plugged sink easily, noting he's very good with his hands. Beyond this comment, however, there's no strong evidence of particular affection between them. In the case of Winston and his estranged wife Catherine, theirs was evidently a borderline hostile relationship. They were ill-matched in terms of compatibility. As with most good thinkful party women, Catherine had been successfully conditioned to be repulsed by sex, though the couple attempted to persevere for some months before separating. The two remained in an uneasy marriage for some 15 months, given, as Catherine often repeated, they had a duty to the party to produce offspring. Winston feels lucky that no child appeared in his unhappy marriage, and, as we shall see, he was probably right. Children are routinely conditioned into an unwavering worship of the Big Brother and the party. On the scale of loyalty, there is loyalty to Big Brother above all else, then the party, and then to their parents. Party children are generally moulded in this way by groups such as the Youth League and the Spies. Our main contact with the Spies, of course, comes with Winston's errand of unblocking Mrs. Parsons' sink in Chapter 2 of Part 1. Both of her children wear the blue shorts, grey shirts and red neckerchiefs of the group. The two are horrible, the boy in particular somewhat out of control. Winston notes that when the boy mock points a toy gun at him and accuses him of thought crime, he raises his hands semi-seriously, his feeling being that the hatred of the boy's demeanour was quite genuine, and that the boy had an evident desire to kick or hit him. Within the Spies, children were conditioned into love for Big Brother and the party. This is achieved through consistent activities such as the singing of songs, processions, hoisting of banners, through marches, hiking trips, drilling with dummy rifles, and the shouting of slogans. Yet while the party moulds their wards into a worship of Big Brother, they are at the same time encouraged to despise enemies of the party, foreigners, traitors, saboteurs and thought criminals. Winston further notes that most weeks, the Times nearly always had a paragraph detailing how a spy overheard some heretical remark being spoken by his parents or a relative, and had given them up to the thought police. The term usually applied to such kids is child hero. This, of course, is the fate of Tom Parsons in Part 3, his own daughter having overheard him shouting, "Down with Big Brother," in his sleep. Given such a culture, it's no wonder then that it's quite normal for most parents to be afraid of their own children, a trend most exemplified in the wretched Mrs. Parsons. For the party, marriage and children have thus mostly been successfully warped to serve its purposes of helping to maintain its own grip on absolute power. Marriages are generally loveless and akin to a semi-permanent chore, whereby the couple serve as breeders to repopulate the next generation of fanatical party workers. At the same time, though most parents are afraid of their own kids to differing degrees, parents are still somewhat encouraged to love their children, which serves to make them more vulnerable to denouncement if they show any sign of thought crime. The kids then serve as useful plants in households, supplementing the telescreens and thought police, another very intimate layer of surveillance and control. All of this, of course, is only applicable to party children, or I dare say, outer party children. Proles, as we have noted in other videos on this channel, are not subject to the same strict rules as party members. Unlike party men and women, prole promiscuity is looked upon with indifference. Proles still marry, usually around the age of 20, and have many children, perhaps 8 or 10 or even more. They are married young, middle-aged around 30, and die around 60. Unlike party members, divorce is even permitted. All of this is simply because the proles are deemed politically harmless, since party doctrine states that proles can never revolt of their own accord, that is, without intellectual guidance that usually comes from the middle class, in this case the outer party. They are deemed beneath suspicion, and so, as with all the other restrictions and rules, marriage and children among the proles is simply irrelevant. As for the inner party, though no specific information or examples are available with which to explain their situation, it's likely that, given the whole process of the systems of control and surveillance is to keep absolute power in the hands of this elite, that the restrictions and moulding of their offspring is likely lax, or at least different, compared to outer party kids. This is not necessarily to suggest that no rules or expectations are applied to inner party members when it comes to marriage and children, but it is to maintain that these are likely less enforceable on this class, though this is speculation on my part. Interestingly, children of inner party members are not automatically inducted into this elite of oceanic society. All party children take examinations at age 16 to determine which branch of the party they fall into. Perhaps then, given such egalitarian rules on basic membership, inner party children too are also inducted into organisations such as the Youth League and SPIES. I personally find this fairly unlikely, based on the observation that all the leadership positions in adult life are generally taken up by inner party members, and yet in these groups, positions like branch secretary, troop leader, etc. are generally filled by outer party kids, Julia being an example. Of course, it's possible such inner party kids are upper leadership, even at these young ages, given their relatively small numbers, but again, this is all just fun theorising on my end. So there we are, some thoughts on the subjects of children and marriage in 1984. Would you still marry and try for a family in Orwell's dystopian world? Let us all know in the comments, and if you like this content, then consider hitting that like button and smashing that subscribe button so as not to consign 1984 lore to the YouTube memory hole. And remember, Big Brother is watching you.